Yo, what's going on, Headliner Nation? It's your boy, The Doc, and we are back, baby. Week 1 of the NFL season is upon us, and I'll be honest, I've been talking about NFL injuries for almost a decade now, and this has probably been the quietest NFL offseason that I have seen from an injury perspective, and that's a good thing. Hopefully, that continues as the weeks go on here, and we start winning fantasy weeks each and every week. But this week, I'm changing the format a little bit of the injury video. Here are 5 questions that I think you need to have the answers to before you set your fantasy lineups this week. All right, guys, let's start with question number 1. The reason most people are probably clicking on this video: do I trust Christian McCaffrey in week 1? Now, Christian McCaffrey has missed the entire preseason with a calf strain, but let's be honest, is there really anything that I could actually say in this video to convince you not to start Christian McCaffrey if he's active this week? No, there isn't. So let's just skip the part where I tell you that dating back to 2017, running backs with a calf injury only return to their previous production in week 1, coming back from that injury 23% of the time, and that 50% of them failed to be at pre-injury production by 3 weeks out. And let's just say that you're going to start Christian McCaffrey in your fantasy league. Elijah Mitchell was supposed to be his backup. He was placed on season-ending IR. So Jordan Mason is the handcuff that you want going into the season. But Christian McCaffrey, it's not one of those situations where I actually think this calf injury is going to linger into the season. He had a lot of time to recover from it. He said a few weeks ago that he was ready to come back. So I'm not horribly concerned about rostering Jordan Mason unless you really feel like you need Christian McCaffrey's handcuff, in which case I don't think it's the worst option in the world. But just know that Christian McCaffrey could start the season a little bit slow, and he's going to be fine. Most likely, nothing's really going to come of this calf injury. It's a preseason issue. He had time to recover from it, and he should be fine heading into week 1. All right, question number 2 is one that I think we're going to be asking ourselves a lot this season, and that's: which Lions running back do I start this week? Now, the thing that prompted this question has got to be Jahmyr Gibbs and his hamstring strain. He's coming off missing most of the preseason with the hamstring injury. Now, the problem with the hamstring strain isn't that I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to miss week 1. I fully expect him to play in week 1. The problem is that the reoccurrence rate for a hamstring strain specifically is incredibly high in basically all football players. So most studies put that reoccurrence rate at about 20%. Some have it even up to 40 or 50%. But just having a single hamstring injury in a player's history increases their risk for another hamstring injury by nearly 3x. So if they've had that injury before, it's highly likely that they will have it again at some point in their career. But the in-season injury risk is even higher. It gets bumped up to nearly 5 times as likely to reoccur. So if you've had a hamstring injury in season, you are 5 times more likely to have a second one. Now, when looking at running backs returning from hamstring injuries, less than 40% of them managed to hit their pre-injury production in their first week back. And 25% of the running backs with hamstring injuries are still affected 6 weeks out after they return. Now, like CMC, you're probably still putting Jahmyr Gibbs in your lineups, but I'm throwing David Montgomery into multiple underdog fantasy lineups this week, expecting him to have a ton of production in this running game. I'm throwing the overs in on David Montgomery over on Underdog Fantasy. And if you want to bet along with me, use the code Headliners to get a first deposit match of up to $1,000 over at Underdog Fantasy using that code Headliners. All right, the next question is one that I get each and every week, and that's: what player am I staying away from this week due to injury? And I'm actually going to head to my favorite NFL team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and talk about running back Jaylen Warren. Now, remember all that stuff that I said about Jahmyr Gibbs and his hamstring strain? Just apply all of that logic to Jaylen Warren. When he left Pittsburgh's second preseason game with a hamstring strain, the team said that they expected him to miss 4 to 6 weeks with this injury. And then last week, all of a sudden, he said he would have played if it was the regular season. I personally don't put a lot of stock into what players say their injury is and how bad it is, because those guys are always trying to play. They're always trying to show that they're tough. I trust what the team says. So I still think there's a chance that Jaylen Warren, even though he's expected to play in this game, could be considerably limited in this game. And he's running behind an offensive line that's also banged up this week. So I just don't think it's a very smart play to throw Jaylen Warren in on a shorter amount of rest with this hamstring strain, knowing that the risk of re-injury is still pretty high and you could end up with an absolute dud week from your running back. I'm just kind of staying away from Warren. I'm going to see what he does on my bench this week and then hope that if he puts up some good numbers that I can throw him back into the lineup in week 2. I don't want to take huge L's the first week when most of my fantasy players are healthy, and Jaylen Warren is just too much risk for me to want to put into a lineup this week. All right, the next question is, should we be panicking about Keenan Allen? So for those of you that don't know, Keenan Allen dealing with a heel injury. He actually missed the last 4 games of last season with a heel injury. It is the same foot, but Bears GM Ryan Poles did come out and say that the issue was with Keenan Allen's cleats. So it might even just be a blister. It's hard to say for sure what's going on with Keenan Allen, but it is concerning. That's the same foot that cost him basically the entire NFL playoffs. Allen is still limited in practice. I do think that he will play, and I think you're probably okay to throw him in your lineup. Tennessee doesn't have a great defense from a pass defense perspective, so Allen should get plenty of opportunities to put up a decent stat line against them. Depends on really how much you trust Caleb Williams in his first start as an NFL quarterback, but Keenan Allen, he's a solid wide receiver 3, probably more of a flex option for me this week. I don't love him, but I also don't hate him either. This heel injury isn't really something that I'm too overly concerned about. All right, guys, last question of the week. What injury news is fake injury news this week? Every week of the NFL season, we're going to be looking at some injury news that I think is just not really a big deal, but people are making a big deal. And this week we got tight end Kyle Pitts with the Falcons. Now, he has a hamstring injury according to reports. He was limited on Wednesday. This created a lot of headlines because all the reports that came out from practice were that he was limited due to a hamstring injury, but all they're really doing is reading the injury report because people that were at that practice said that Kyle Pitts basically did everything in the practice. He missed a couple reps. He even came out and said, hey, this isn't really a thing that you guys are making it out to be. So we're not too horribly worried about Kyle Pitts and his phantom hamstring injury. I don't think the Steelers are a great matchup for Kyle Pitts. I think they have a lot of guys that they can throw at him, but Kirk Cousins has been historically pretty bad against the Steelers defense. He has a 2 to 4 touchdown to interception ratio over his career against the Steelers. So it's not like Cousins has ever really played amazing against them, but it's a totally new team, totally different offense. So we'll see what happens with Kyle Pitts and Kirk Cousins. But if you drafted Pitts to be your starting tight end, you're hoping that he's back practicing in full by the time you're watching this video. I'm not too overly concerned about it unless we see him just not practicing later in the week. All right, guys, I know that this injury video was a little different than what a lot of you are used to. We've decided to change it up a little bit. I've put a lot of players up on the screen and my prediction on if those players are going to be in or out. I just felt like the injury videos were getting kind of stale. It's a lot of minute details that I didn't feel like a lot of people were really enjoying. So I tried to focus mostly on the bigger names and then put this up at the end. If there's a question about a specific player though, please leave them in the comments down below. Let me know if you liked this format better than years past where I went through every single little tiny injury that was going on. The videos were a lot longer and I just don't really think people have the attention span to talk about injuries for 25-30 minutes. So hopefully you appreciated this kind of quicker format. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And if you want to interact with me more, the best way to get injury updates from our channel is by hitting that little join button, becoming a member of the exclusive Headliner Nation Discord, where we're chatting about injuries each and every day as the news breaks. I post videos on the Discord, letting you guys know what I think is going on with injuries. And on Sunday nights, I even hop on the Discord and discuss injuries with people that are part of the Discord. So it really is the best way to stay on top of each and every week, what injuries are happening and not happening and what I think about them in the moment when they're actually going down. So you guys get as much of an advantage as possible over your league mates because you've got an actual doctor telling you kind of what they think as things are happening. So make sure you hit the join button, become a Discord member. But that's all I got for you guys this week. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time.
Analytics, off the chain, off the channel.